Hello everyone, today we talk about sleep. Sleep is not a luxury. It is a biological necessity, as essential as food, water, and oxygen. And yet, in our fast-paced, light-saturated, hyperconnected lives, sleep is the first thing we sacrifice. Today I want to share with you 5 scientifically backed signs that your body gives you, clear signals, that you are on the path to perfecting your sleep. Because when you sleep right, everything changes. Your cognition sharpens. Your emotions stabilize. Your creativity expands. Your physical health regenerates. Let's dive deep, not just into sleep science but sleep mastery. But the timing of that light exposure is everything. If you get light exposure early in the day, ideally within 30 to 60 minutes of waking, you lock in the proper timing of your circadian rhythm. That early light anchors your internal clock and ensures that melatonin will begin to rise roughly 14 to 16 hours later, setting you up for deep, restorative sleep. On the other hand, if you miss that early light, or worse, get most of your bright light exposure late in the evening from artificial sources like phones, tablets, and TVs, you confuse your SCN. It interprets that late light as a signal that the day is still ongoing, which delays the natural onset of melatonin and shifts your entire sleep cycle forward. The result? You feel wide awake at midnight and groggy in the morning. Over time, this misalignment can lead to chronic sleep debt, low mood, impaired learning, and even metabolic issues. Getting light right is not a suggestion, it's the most foundational tool for regulating your sleep. This is why the recommendation is so precise: get outside within 30 to 60 minutes of waking, and get at least 5 to 10 minutes of sunlight if it's a clear day. If it's cloudy, double that. And don't rely on windows. Glass filters out the wavelengths that most effectively stimulate those retinal cells. Once you've anchored your circadian rhythm with early morning light, you'll notice a series of powerful benefits. You fall asleep more easily and consistently. You wake up without grogginess, even without an alarm. Your energy is more stable throughout the day. Your mood improves, and stress tolerance increases. Circadian rhythm alignment doesn't just affect sleep. It influences dopamine tone, alertness peaks, cognitive clarity, and even immune system function. Your brain and body perform at their best when they know what time it is. Of course, light isn't the only factor. Exercise, meal timing, and temperature cues also feed into the circadian system. But light is the primary Zeitgeber, the German word for time giver. Without this signal, your brain loses its sense of day and night. In a world filled with artificial light, screens, and unpredictable schedules, perfecting your sleep starts by reconnecting with the natural rhythms that your biology evolved to follow. Nature gave us the tools. Neuroscience gives us the clarity. All that remains is practice. So if you're serious about improving your sleep, not just the quantity, but the quality and consistency, make morning sunlight your daily ritual. It's simple. It's free. And it's the starting point for mastering your internal clock, and by extension, mastering your energy, focus, and life. Because sleep isn't just about what happens at night. It starts the moment you wake up. Most people think of sleep as something that just happens. You lie down, close your eyes, and either you fall asleep or you don't. But that mindset is fundamentally flawed. Sleep is not passive. It's not binary. It's not just the absence of wakefulness. Sleep is a highly active and dynamic process, driven by complex neurological systems, and, here's the key, it's trainable. Think of sleep the same way you would a physical or mental skill, like strength training or learning a new language. It requires practice, feedback, and refinement. When treated with that mindset, sleep transforms from a mysterious frustration into a reliable performance tool. At the center of this skill is the sleep architecture, the cycling between stages of non-REM and REM sleep. Non-REM includes light sleep and deep, slow-wave sleep, while REM sleep supports memory consolidation and emotional processing. A skilled sleeper moves through these cycles smoothly, with high sleep efficiency, meaning most time in bed is spent asleep, not tossing and turning. But how do we train this skill? It begins with understanding that sleep is regulated by 2 primary systems: the circadian rhythm, which sets the timing of sleep, and the sleep homostat, which controls the pressure to sleep. Every hour you're awake, adenosine builds up in your brain. This molecule is part of the sleep homostat. It creates increasing pressure to sleep. The longer you're awake, the higher the adenosine levels. When you finally go to sleep, that pressure is discharged. But here's where many people go wrong. Caffeine binds to adenosine receptors and masks this signal, tricking your brain into feeling awake. If you consume caffeine too late in the day, say, within 8 to 10 hours of bedtime, it interferes with that natural buildup, making it harder to fall and stay asleep. This is why timing your caffeine intake is crucial to developing the skill of sleep. It's not about eliminating caffeine, it's about respecting how your neurochemistry works. Next, consider behavioral consistency, one of the most powerful training principles for better sleep. The brain loves rhythms. If you go to bed at 10 p.m. one night and 1 a.m. the next, then wake at different times on weekends, your circadian system can't anchor itself. Irregular timing creates internal biological jet lag, even without crossing time zones. When your sleep and wake times are consistent, however, even on weekends, you strengthen the body's ability to predict and prepare for sleep. Melatonin release becomes timed properly. Core body temperature lowers when it should. Heart rate variability improves. Over time, this consistency trains your nervous system to enter sleep more quickly and deeply, even under stress. But what if you've had years of poor sleep? That's where protocols and environmental design come into play. Training the sleep skill means building a sleep-friendly environment. That starts with temperature. Your body needs to cool slightly to enter and maintain deep sleep. Keeping your room cool, ideally between 60 to 67 degrees Fahrenheit, 15 to 19 degrees Celsius, can improve both sleep latency and depth. Next is light control. Bright artificial light in the evening, especially overhead LEDs and screens, sends a strong signal to your brain that it's still daytime. This delays melatonin production and disrupts your sleep onset. In contrast, dimming the lights 1 to 2 hours before bed and avoiding screens helps reinforce the darkness cue your brain relies on to start the descent into sleep. Also essential is managing pre-sleep autonomic tone. If you're revved up, checking email, watching stressful content, or engaged in stimulating conversations, your sympathetic nervous system is activated. This raises heart rate and body temperature, and impairs the transition to sleep. This is where downshifting practices matter. Techniques like NSDR, non-sleep deep rest, yoga nidra, slow breathing, or even a hot bath, which paradoxically lowers core temperature, can ease your nervous system into a parasympathetic state. You're not forcing sleep, you're preparing the system for it, like warming up before a workout. What's remarkable is that once you train the sleep skill, it becomes automatic. You'll begin to notice that your body starts getting sleepy at the same time each night. You'll wake up naturally, without an alarm. Your dreams will become more vivid, and your memory, learning, and mood throughout the day will all improve. The effects are compounding. Better sleep improves focus, better focus improves habits, and better habits reinforce better sleep. It becomes a positive feedback loop. We must stop seeing sleep as a passive biological event and start approaching it like a performance skill, one that's entirely within our control, shaped by the choices we make during the day and evening. Through simple, science-supported behaviors, you can reshape your brain's relationship to sleep, and in doing so, reshape the way you show up in every aspect of your life. Because the truth is, sleep doesn't just repair your body. It builds your capacity to live well, think clearly, and lead powerfully, day after day. Most people have heard of melatonin. They think of it as the sleep hormone. Walk into any pharmacy, and you'll see bottles promising deeper sleep, faster sleep, more sleep. But this common understanding of melatonin is incomplete, and often misleading. Melatonin is not a sedative. It does not make you sleepy in the way that a sleeping pill or alcohol might. What melatonin actually does is serve as a time-of-day signal. It tells your body and brain that it's time to start the sleep process. Think of it as a hormonal sunset inside your body, letting every system know that night is here. Here's where things get interesting. The timing of melatonin releases everything. When it rises in sync with the natural light-dark cycle, it works beautifully. But when it's disrupted by behavior, environment, or artificial light, it loses its signaling power, and so does your ability to fall asleep, stay asleep, and feel rested. Melatonin is produced by the pineal gland, a tiny structure in the center of your brain. But the pineal doesn't act on its own. It's governed by the suprachiasmatic nucleus, SCN, your body's central clock. This clock, in turn, is regulated by light, specifically light detected by melanopsin-containing retinal ganglion cells in your eyes. Here's how it works. When light enters your eyes, especially blue light, it sends a powerful signal to the SCN saying, it's daytime. That signal inhibits melatonin production. In contrast, as daylight fades and light intensity lowers, the SCN allows the pineal gland to begin releasing melatonin. This usually starts around 9 p.m., assuming you're on a standard sleep schedule and your light exposure has been natural and well-timed. But now think about our modern world. Screens. Overhead LEDs. Phones in the face at 10 p.m. These emit the exact wavelengths of light that suppress melatonin production. You may feel tired, but your brain isn't getting the hormonal cue that it's time for sleep. Instead, melatonin release is delayed, which pushes your internal clock later and makes it harder to fall asleep. Over time, this repeated delay causes your entire circadian rhythm to shift. You start staying up later, sleeping in longer, and struggling to wake up. Social jet lag sets in. Your internal clock is out of sync with your social and professional obligations. Your focus and energy suffer. Even your metabolism and immune function begin to degrade, all due to something as simple as melatonin misalignment. So how do we fix this? The first and most important step is to respect light timing. You must protect the darkness that allows melatonin to rise naturally. Start by dimming artificial lights in your home around 8 to 9 p.m. Switch to warmer, amber-colored lighting, or use red lights in the evening. Avoid overhead lights, which send more intense light directly into the retina. Better yet, use lamps positioned below eye level. Next, limit screen use in the final hour or two before bed. If you must use a screen, enable night mode, use blue light filters, or wear blue light blocking glasses. These don't eliminate all melatonin suppression, but they reduce it significantly, sometimes by 30 to 50%. It's also important to understand that melatonin does not act like a light switch. It's not about when you start feeling sleepy. It's about when you prepare to sleep. Melatonin begins rising 1.5 to 2 hours before your biological sleep onset. So if your goal is to fall asleep at 10:30 p.m., you want to dim the lights and avoid screens starting around 8:30 p.m. This brings us to an important point about melatonin supplements. They can be useful in certain contexts, like adjusting to a new time zone or realigning a delayed sleep phase. But melatonin is not a sleep drug. Taking it too late, too frequently, or in too high a dose can desensitize your melatonin receptors or confuse your internal clock further. The effective dose, if used at all, is tiny, 0.3 to 1 mg, ideally taken 60 to 90 minutes before bed. Most commercial doses are far too high. Ultimately, the best way to support melatonin isn't through supplements, it's through light hygiene. Get bright light early in the day, avoid bright artificial light at night, and create a consistent sleep-wake routine. Your pineal gland will handle the rest. Melatonin is powerful, but it's not magic. It's a signal, nothing more, nothing less. And that signal can only do its job when you allow it to rise at the right time, under the right conditions. If you want better sleep, deeper recovery, and more energy, start not by adding things to your life, but by removing unnecessary light, noise, and chaos from your evenings. Because when you give your brain the proper cues, it doesn't have to be forced to sleep. It simply remembers how. Most people assume that sleep is just about rest, turning off the lights and drifting into unconsciousness so the body can relax. But when we look under the hood of what actually happens during deep sleep, a very different picture emerges. Sleep is not a passive state. In fact, during deep sleep, your brain becomes incredibly active, not in the way it does during problem-solving or conscious thought, but in its own internal housekeeping system that is absolutely essential to long-term brain health. This phase is called slow-wave sleep or deep non-REM sleep, and it typically dominates the first third of your sleep cycle. It's during this stage that your brain begins the process of literally cleaning itself. That's not a metaphor. The brain has a dedicated system for flushing out metabolic waste, and that system is called the glymphatic system. Just as your body has a lymphatic system to remove toxins and support immunity, the brain has its own unique version, which becomes highly active during deep sleep. What's remarkable is that the brain cells actually shrink by up to 60% during this phase. That shrinking creates more space between the neurons, allowing cerebrospinal fluid to flow more freely and wash through brain tissue, clearing out harmful byproducts that accumulate during wakefulness. One of the primary waste products removed during deep sleep is beta-amyloid, a sticky protein that, when left unchecked, can clump together and form the plaques associated with Alzheimer's disease. Other waste products, like tau proteins, oxidative byproducts, and general cellular debris, are also cleared during this time. The body cannot remove these toxins efficiently while you're awake, they are simply too embedded within the active and electrically noisy environment of the working brain. What triggers the glymphatic system to activate so intensely during deep sleep? It comes down to neuronal activity slowing down, heart rate dropping, and brain waves transitioning to the low-frequency delta patterns typical of slow-wave sleep. These delta waves, electrical rhythms of 0.5 to 4 Hz, signal that the brain is no longer involved in complex cognition. That slowdown allows the glial cells, the support cells in your brain, to shift their function toward fluid regulation and toxin clearance. But deep sleep isn't only about detox. This phase is also critical for memory consolidation, cellular repair, and immune system balance. During deep sleep, growth hormone is released from the pituitary gland. This hormone supports tissue regeneration, muscle recovery, and even bone strength. Without enough deep sleep, physical recovery from workouts, injuries, or illness is compromised. Another key benefit of deep sleep is its role in regulating emotional responses. Deep sleep allows the brain's emotional centers, particularly the amygdala, to reset. When deep sleep is truncated, whether due to poor sleep habits, stress, caffeine use, or light exposure, the amygdala becomes more reactive. This shows up in daily life as increased irritability, reduced impulse control, and elevated anxiety. Unfortunately, deep sleep is also one of the most fragile stages of sleep. It's easily disrupted by things like alcohol, even if consumed hours before bed. While alcohol might help you fall asleep faster, it significantly reduces the amount of time you spend in slow-wave sleep. Likewise, stimulant medications, high evening cortisol levels, and even inconsistent bedtimes can diminish deep sleep quality. Improving deep sleep, then, means supporting your brain's ability to enter and maintain this restorative phase. The first step is to align your sleep timing with your natural circadian rhythm. Your body needs to know when it's night. That begins with bright light exposure early in the day, and avoiding bright light in the evening. This alignment helps trigger melatonin release at the right time, which sets the stage for proper sleep cycling. Second, control your sleeping environment. Lower the temperature in your bedroom, ideally to 60 to 67 degrees Fahrenheit, 15 to 19 degrees Celsius, since a slight drop in core body temperature is a strong signal to the brain to initiate sleep. Use blackout curtains or sleep masks to eliminate stray light. And reduce noise, or use white or pink noise to help mask environmental sounds that could fragment your deep sleep. Third, avoid substances that block deep sleep, like alcohol, nicotine, or large meals late at night. While some people think a nightcap or a big dinner helps them sleep better, these actually reduce slow-wave sleep, fragment your sleep cycles, and impair your brain's cleaning processes. Finally, consistency is key. Going to bed and waking up at the same time every day, even on weekends, reinforces the brain's sleep architecture. Over time, this strengthens the neural pathways and hormonal cascades that lead into deep, restorative sleep. And once you make deep sleep more reliable, your mental clarity, emotional stability, and physical health improve dramatically. Because deep sleep isn't just a luxury. It's how your brain resets, recovers, and protects itself for the long term. In a world that constantly pushes us to do more and rest less, reclaiming deep sleep is one of the most powerful forms of self-care, and one of the smartest health decisions you can make. There's a phase of sleep that, for decades, was dismissed as random, bizarre, or even meaningless. People talked about it as dream sleep, often with amusement or mystery. But now, modern neuroscience has revealed what really happens during REM sleep, and the findings are astonishing. REM, which stands for rapid eye movement, is a unique and essential phase of the sleep cycle that plays a major role in how we learn, how we regulate emotions, and even how we think creatively. It typically starts about 90 minutes after you fall asleep and becomes longer and more frequent as the night progresses, especially in the second half of the night. During REM sleep, brain activity actually resembles wakefulness in many ways. In fact, certain areas of the brain, like the amygdala, hippocampus, and anterior cingulate cortex, become more active during REM than when you're awake. These are regions associated with emotion processing, memory, and problem solving. So while your body is paralyzed to prevent you from acting out dreams, your brain is anything but idle. It's engaged in a deeply restorative, integrative process. It's connecting dots, resolving emotional conflicts, and generating new associations. This is where creativity is born, not from conscious effort, but from the free association and emotional reprocessing that REM allows. Let's break this down. During the day, your brain takes in thousands of experiences, thoughts, images, and emotions. These are encoded in various parts of the brain, especially in the hippocampus, which handles memory formation, and limbic structures, which deal with emotion. But they're raw, unprocessed. They haven't been fully organized or made sense of. That's where REM sleep comes in. In REM, the brain reactivates those circuits, but without the usual constraints of logic, fear, or inhibition. This allows memories and emotions to recombine in novel ways. Your brain can make associations it never could when you were awake. That's why so many artists, inventors, and scientists report breakthroughs after sleep. The insight doesn't come from conscious thought, it comes from what the brain does with information during REM. Emotionally, REM sleep is just as critical. It's often called overnight therapy. When you enter REM, the brain replays emotionally intense experiences but with the stress neurochemicals like norepinephrine turned way down. This allows the emotional weight of the experience to be processed without reliving the full stress response. In other words, you remember the event, but the pain is softened. This is why people who sleep well often feel more emotionally balanced, less reactive, and better able to handle difficult situations. When REM sleep is disrupted or reduced, the consequences show up quickly. Emotional regulation becomes harder. The amygdala, your brain's threat detection system, becomes hyperactive, making you more prone to irritability, anxiety, and impulsive decisions. Creativity drops. Memory becomes scattered. Even social interaction suffers. This is especially important for anyone in a high-stakes environment: leaders, parents, students, athletes. If you want to think clearly, handle stress, and solve complex problems, REM sleep is non-negotiable. Now, how do you get more REM sleep and protect it? First, understand that REM sleep occurs in cycles. Each night, your brain goes through 90-minute sleep cycles, alternating between non-REM and REM. In the early part of the night, deep non-REM sleep dominates. As the night progresses, REM episodes become longer and more intense. So if you're only getting 5 to 6 hours of sleep, you're cutting off the richest REM periods, which typically happen in the final 1 to 2 hours of a full night. That's why sleep duration matters. The full 7.5 to 9 hours is essential not just for quantity but for the structure of sleep to unfold properly. Second, avoid substances that impair REM. Alcohol is the most common culprit. It may help you fall asleep, but it severely reduces REM duration and fragments sleep architecture. Cannabis, particularly THC-heavy strains, also suppress REM. You may not dream as vividly, or at all, and that's a sign your REM sleep is being diminished. Also, late-night light exposure can delay your circadian rhythm, pushing REM cycles later into the morning, which increases the risk of cutting them short. Use dim lighting and reduce screen exposure in the 1 to 2 hours before bed to help your brain maintain its natural timing. Finally, create sleep consistency. Go to bed and wake up at the same time every day. A steady rhythm trains the brain to cycle through the phases of sleep, including REM, more reliably. Irregular schedules disrupt REM and reduce its restorative benefits. The take-home message is this: REM sleep is not optional. It's where your brain integrates knowledge, heals from emotional stress, and generates new ideas. It gives you emotional resilience, mental agility, and creative power. If you want to become smarter, calmer, and more effective, not just feel rested, then don't just focus on sleep. Focus on getting the right kind of sleep. And that means protecting REM, night after night. People often look for quick fixes when it comes to sleep. Supplements, apps, hacks, or pills. But what neuroscience shows us, over and over, is that the most effective and reliable method for improving sleep isn't found in a bottle or a wearable. It's found in something deceptively simple: behavioral consistency. In fact, if there were a single pill that could improve your sleep latency, depth, quality, and duration all at once, it would be this: go to bed and wake up at the same time every day, including weekends. Consistency is not just helpful, it's foundational. It's what trains your nervous system to expect, prepare for, and enter sleep predictably. This has everything to do with the brain's built-in clock system. The circadian rhythm is a roughly 24-hour cycle that governs virtually every function in your body, from hormone release and body temperature to digestion and alertness. This rhythm is not fixed by the clock on your wall, it's set by repeated, timed cues from your environment and behavior. One of the strongest behavioral cues, or Zeitgebers, as scientists call them, is your sleep-wake time. When you go to bed at a consistent hour and wake up at the same time every day, your body begins to anticipate sleep as that hour approaches. Melatonin rises on time. Core body temperature begins to drop. Heart rate slows. The systems of the body cooperate because they trust the signal. But when you constantly shift your bedtime, staying up late on weekends, sleeping in, waking early some days and late on others, you confuse that biological clock. The brain no longer knows when it's supposed to wind down. Melatonin timing becomes irregular. Sleep onset becomes harder. And your body begins fighting against your schedule instead of aligning with it. This is what scientists refer to as social jet lag, a state of internal desynchronization where your biological time doesn't match your social time. This misalignment does more than just make you tired. It alters glucose metabolism, weakens immune function, disrupts mood, and reduces cognitive performance. And over time, it becomes a chronic stressor on the system. You might think you're just not a good sleeper. But in reality, you may simply be lacking consistency. Now, behavioral consistency isn't just about when you go to sleep. It's also about the rituals that lead up to it. The brain thrives on patterns. A pre-sleep routine that unfolds the same way each night acts like a gentle countdown timer. Dim the lights. Shut off screens. Read a physical book. Do some slow nasal breathing. Keep your environment quiet and cool. These signals, repeated consistently, build a reliable association between these behaviors and the onset of sleep. Even simple, repeatable behaviors like brushing your teeth, stretching, or journaling at the same time every night can become neural cues for your brain that say, it's time to power down. Consistency also applies to your wake-up routine. One of the most powerful ways to reinforce your circadian rhythm is to get sunlight into your eyes within 30 to 60 minutes of waking, every single day, even on cloudy days. This morning light anchors your internal clock and creates a cascade of alertness-promoting neurochemicals like dopamine, norepinephrine, and cortisol, not in the stress sense, but in the healthy, energizing sense that you need to feel awake and focused. If you wake at a different time every day, your brain can't reliably predict when to start this hormonal cascade. The result is grogginess, poor focus, and, again, difficulty falling asleep later. What's fascinating is how quickly the brain adapts to consistency. Within just a week of fixed sleep and wake times, most people notice that they begin to feel sleepy at the same hour each night and wake up before their alarm. That's not a coincidence. That's the nervous system locking into rhythm. And that rhythm supports everything from mood regulation and cognitive clarity to immune function and physical recovery. Of course, life is messy. Travel, deadlines, stress, and family responsibilities can interfere. But the goal is not perfection. The goal is to create a centerline of consistency that you return to as quickly as possible. Even 1 or 2 nights of disrupted sleep won't derail your health, if you've built the neural expectation of consistency into your baseline. So instead of obsessing over the latest supplement or device, start with what's proven, free, and within your control. Set a consistent bedtime. Wake up at the same time. Anchor both ends of your day with light, quiet, and simplicity. Because when your behaviors become predictable, your biology becomes reliable. And when your biology becomes reliable, your energy, mood, focus, and resilience improve, not randomly, but systematically. Night after night, day after day. That's how real sleep transformation happens. Not by chasing results, but by repeating the right signals, again and again.